We moved to Mountain in the summer 2019. I came to Canada 2003, and most of my time in Canada I spent in Ontario. Met my wife in Ukraine, married her in 2011. Then our daughter came 2012, and our son was born 2018. And then in 2019, promotion opportunity came up at my work with a condition to relocate to Moncton. I went to check on a reconnaissance trip and liked what I found. So a few months later, we're in North Moncton. Well, we were moving on in peaceful times, let's put it that way. So there was no challenge for me. Like I was fluent in English before I came. My wife spoke some English, and she went to college. So it was normal life for normal immigrant, like nothing extraordinary. So we felt welcome anywhere we lived. Our kids enjoyed their own little children community. So it's a great life for us in Canada. You can see that some of them pretty much flee with clothes on their back, right? And some of them might not even have papers if they had to take off. Went to the bomb shelter and came back, and there is nothing left from their house, right? Besides from not having too much of material possessions to speak of, they are under huge psychological stress from trauma, and us here, we are worried, and them, it's a completely different level. So they definitely need support, emotional support. After Crimea, the unrest started brewing in the east, and people there were expecting that, well, same thing will happen. Little green man will move in and just will take over. Whereas we understand now that Putin wasn't interested in just Donbass, he was interested in the entire Ukraine, either joining or being destroyed. However, despite the unrest, there was not much of armed resistance, because people, well, they wanted maybe better life, but not really were ready to die for cheaper piece of sausage. Well, I mean, they're not starving, right? Then Minsk agreements were signed between Ukraine and Russia. After that invasion, open invasion in August 2014, again, an ill-advised tragedy, we had not many troops to defend the rest of Ukraine. So we were forced to sign the agreement, ceasefire. People in Russia were elated. They saw West is doing nothing. The support for Putin went up past 80%. And for 8 years, there was this constant brew, well, Ukraine is not really a country, Ukrainian people, they are just a branch of Russian people. They, made up history. They were invented by the military of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. all kinds of stories. When people are either uneducated or would like to believe what they hear, that's what they believe. 2019, President Volodymyr Zelensky was elected. 73% of people who came to the polls voted in his favor. Then, as you know, the Russian government issued this ultimatum, what we can call it, where Ukraine was demanded to declare their neutral status, and West was demanded to stop supplying any arms, either to Ukraine or to any other former Soviet republics like Baltics. And also NATO was demanded to move their lines back to a situation of 1997. So it was rejected, but fortunately Western governments, especially US, UK, Poland, started supplying some arms on a very intense basis to Ukrainian army, and within a couple of months we got a few thousand of Javelin and NLAW anti-tank missiles, which definitely bumped up our defense capability. Kharkiv, that poor megapolis in the east, 40 kilometers from the Russian border, majority population have some connection to the Russian neighbors. They are under horrendous assault, but they are fighting like hell. Now fighting is, they're withdrawing from Kyiv because they're being decimated by the Ukrainian troops, but they're moving again to Donbass and going to probably finish off Mariupol, maintain the alliance in the south of Ukraine. So, unfortunately, my family is directly affected. My in-laws, they've been on the occupied territory since like over 3 weeks, and we haven't heard from them over a week. And we know there is a pretty heavy fighting going on in that region there, in the south of Ukraine. So I don't know how my wife is holding it together. Well, from my in-laws, we haven't heard from them. The area has no electricity. Lines been damaged, and also Russian troops, when they enter small area, like in the city, they can't do that, but in a village, they go collect everyone's cell phones and they destroy cell phone towers. So to make sure that there is no information about them is being shared. So my father-in-law, he just had a heart attack in January. So he had a surgery and stents implanted. Well, I would say he is lucky, because if it would have happened right now, he wouldn't have received the care he needed. And we know that he has some supply of those medications for several months, but he and his wife, my mother-in-law, they both suffer from high blood pressure. So we knew that those medications were being run low. Obviously, some basic stuff like they had food in the freezer. That food is pretty much gone now, unless they manage to salt it, that meat, right? Farmer, we know, brought some 40 loaves of bread for the village. It's a small village. It's about maybe 500 people. He brought it a couple of weeks ago, and told them, well, unfortunately, that's my last run, because there are Russian troops in the area, and by now they understand that everybody local is hostile. Less than 10 kilometers from my in-laws, there is a local administrative center, like maybe 10,000 people live there. Russians just bombed the military commissioner office, and their precision weapons made sure that House Street was wiped out too. Then they eventually entered that small town, looted shops and markets, and didn't allow people to leave, didn't allow humanitarian aid to be brought in. They would only allow to use local buses, and if there were vehicles not from the area coming in, they would seize them. So that kind of made it very difficult for supplies. Moving to the rest of my family there, so my wife's sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, and our niece, they are in Kyiv. So all this time, they were spending time in the shelter, they live in the apartment building. But eventually they stopped going there because they live on the 11th floor, and it's several air raids, sirens in a day. It makes it difficult. So they now just stay in the hallway, away from the windows, hoping that if there is a hit, they will be lucky. We have tried to convince our niece to come over at least, because, men, they can't leave now. Men under 60 can't leave Ukraine. So she might come, but she doesn't want to leave her parents. It's a sad story. So they had an apartment in Crimea. They bought a condo where they would want to retire. Then Crimea was annexed So parents of my brother-in-law went to live in that apartment. They were Russians. They actually came to Ukraine in 1990, I believe. So he is ethnic Russian. Last year, his parents contracted COVID and died within a week from one another. And because there is no stable communication, he had no idea they were, in such a bad shape. Like, he knew they were hospitalized, but his mom was on a mend, his dad was stable. He was trying to get in, but then because of this occupied border, he had to do the extra tests, so he didn't make it on time. Yes, only was able to come there for cremation. And then now he is in Kiev. Kiev is being shelled, hit by the artillery and missiles, and he calls his cousins in Russia, and nobody believes him. And as some just telling him, well, why don't you just surrender? Like, what's the problem? Like, we are going to liberate you. So it makes communication pretty difficult with extended family in Russia for him. So and he had COVID last year twice, so he has a gout. He's not really in fighting shape, but he's good with the sewing machine. So he's sewing balaclavas for the Ukrainian troops. Yeah. And my mom and my aunt are in Dnipro. It's kind of central eastern Ukraine, about 200 kilometers from Donbass. My sister came to stay with them on the eve of the invasion. Because my sister she's an ER anesthesiologist, and she works in two hospitals, one in Kiev and one in Dnipro. So she takes overnight train after a couple of weeks of working in one place. So it was lucky coincidence, obviously, because it's nice that she is able to stay with my mom. My dad passed away, unfortunately, in December from cancer, and he's somewhat lucky because right now there is no non-urgent treatment happening. Like cancer patient, like nephew of my grandfather was released from hospital. He was in line to get adenoma surgery done. No, they told him, no, we can't, we don't have room, we need place for wounded. And Dnipro is relatively safe. Well, they still get hit by the missiles regularly. Like, we leave my mom's house maybe like 10 kilometers from the air base and airport, so they were hit on the 24th of February. Woke up from that, obviously, and there were other strikes since then. My sister, so she's an ER doctor, but on her free time she's fluent in English, so she's helping to coordinate foreign military volunteers to come. Like, there are groups who help people to organize from all over the world, mostly US, UK, Canada, Sweden. People with military experience, they have a free passage, very easy for them. So, and that's being supported and welcome. On the other hand, of course, Ukrainian army, they got the experience after 8 years of fighting, and they are not the army that faced Russians 8 years ago. And again, they got a taste of it now, and they realize that it's not going to be an easy fight. To conclude, I'll tell you that on the Russian side, I said that it's the start when I was interviewed, I think on the 24th of February. Putin will not think too much if he have to use nukes, like maybe on a small scale. But again, Ukrainians, they will not surrender even after that, because they know what they're fighting for, and they will not be beaten into submission. And we appreciate very much the help that the Western democracies are showing to Ukrainian people and people of democratic countries like Canada, first of all, and US and Western Europe. That support is very important, and take any help we can get. Thank you.